The real story goes back to the hero's journey, where the customer is the hero. That hero has a problem. That problem is triggered by something. And then along this journey, that hero meets a guide that gives them the plan. That plan is to help them overcome the quest to get the end result, which is to be the hero. To bring it back into marketing, your customer is the hero. That's the story you need to tell. It just so happens that in this internet marketing space, people think that that story is about them.
Welcome to the Content Supply Podcast. I'm Dallin Need, and each episode we bring you an inspiring brand, creator, or message to help you discover how you can experience success in your business as we unpack stories and strategies about all things content and growing a successful brand. So this is just a whole discovery process for all of us. We feature a variety of different brands on the show, from entrepreneurs, entertainers, copywriters, marketers, coaches, athletes, to designers, filmmakers, photographers, and many more. All brand owners, all creators. So it's my belief, as with many others, that every company is a content company and has to be one to stay relevant and competitive. Because let's be honest, the internet is so full of brands that it can be very easy to get lost in the crowd. So quality and effective content really separates you. That's why Content Supply was created, to supply brands with ongoing custom content so they can engage with their customers by providing value, telling stories, and making more sales. And when we say content, I'm talking about video and audio and written or image, all and everything in between, all those. Content creation and building a business is really hard. You never finish the building and creating. Even after you experience some success, you have to keep going on the journey. Content Supply was created to be a resource, a community, and a solution to fill that large gap of content. So thanks for joining the show. Now let's get to the interview. Anthony Moto is an aerospace engineer turned digital marketer or serial entrepreneur. He's got one heck of a story that I believe you'll find some inspiration in. And in our conversation, we cover everything from purple cows to brand storytelling, and brand storytelling that actually matters. Little caveat, so the internet died in the middle of our conversation. We kept recording. His audio just changed a little bit, but it doesn't change the fact that you can still hear him and the little nuggets that he is talking about, as well as me. Anthony, super appreciate you joining this podcast.
No worries.
So let's jump back into why you got into digital marketing.
So this is the crazy part. I was an aerospace engineer, and I used to design satellites and telescopes. Basically went up and mapped lightning and all this other stuff. And that was basically my life through college and then a little bit afterwards. And by the time I graduated, I was an overpaid paper pusher. Now, it sounds much more impressive than it actually is to say, oh yeah, I worked on top secret stuff. But the reality is they paid me for my signature. It was, hey, I need you to change this from 2 inches to 2¼ inches, then sign off on it because you were an engineer. So I didn't really like that job, and I eventually ended up getting fired from that job, not necessarily because of bad performance, but my company had just been acquired, and then they relocated me to San Diego, and then I had a worst boss in the world here. Him and I just clashed all the time because he wanted to duct tape everything, and I said, no, this stuff has to be safe, So I ended up getting fired from that job, and I said, okay, well, I don't want to be an engineer. This sucks. This is retarded. And I just had this horrible experience. So I decided to invest in real estate. And at the time, I think this was 2010 or 2011, the real estate market was just like climbing, just cranking. So I bought a house in Riverside County. And just by living in that house, I made like $60,000. And I didn't do anything. I didn't flip it. And I had roommates paying for my mortgage. So like nothing was really even out of pocket. So I said, okay, I lost my job. I should do this again because I don't want to be an engineer again. So I decided, okay, I'll take 6 months, get my unemployment checks, and then go invest out of state because by now the real estate market started going up and I couldn't afford in California anymore. Then I went to Atlanta. I bought 2 houses out there, and I was referred to a contractor through my real estate agent. And here's where the sour side happens. I didn't know something called contractor fraud existed. So basically, I pulled a hard money loan to pay for these houses, and I put 50% down on these houses for the guy to start fixing it up. And he started doing it. And then all of a sudden, he walked away with $100,000 and didn't do a thing. So here I am. I don't have a job as an engineer anymore. I'm on unemployment, barely running out, like last few months here. Um, and the dude just robbed me $100,000. And so I was contacting him. I was contacting every police department. They wouldn't do anything. The lawyers wouldn't do anything because it was a federal matter, and then they wanted like 30 grand just to sue the guy. They couldn't even guarantee my money. They just wanted the 30 grand and said, yeah, if we win, we win. If we lose, you still owe me 30 grand. So basically, I had to fire him because I couldn't do anything else, and I couldn't prove fraud or anything. And I ended up driving out to Atlanta and living in this house without water, plumbing, or electricity, and bullet holes. And I was sleeping on the floor with sawdust with my two dogs and stuff like that. And for all intents and purposes, I was homeless. I was homeless for about a year and a half doing that. And so the climbing gym, I'm a rock climber, so the climbing gym was my shower. And I would go over there, take a shower every day. I would eat canned chicken for 30 days straight. I didn't have a toilet, so I was literally pooping in a bucket because it was so dangerous outside. I would go outside and people were slinging drugs, and there were hookers like right outside my, front door basically. So I just like stayed in. I had my Costco chicken, and I went 40,000 more in debt just to get this house habitable enough to sell it as is. So I ended up selling it as is to this investor, and by that time, I had no idea what I was going to do because it was a year and a half and I couldn't go back to work. Nobody wanted to hire me anymore because I had been out of work for too long. And you have to picture this. I'm $100,000 in debt of borrowed money. Then I'm 40,000 in credit card debt. And I can't get a job besides maybe Jack in the Box with an aerospace engineering degree. And so I was like, oh my God, what do I do? Um, but this is, I say it's the worst and best thing that's ever happened to me because at the climbing gym where I took a shower, I met this guy and he sold used books on Amazon. And he would drive around to thrift stores and, drive up and down Creation, go to libraries, buy these books and flip them. And he showed me his numbers. I think he was making like $120,000 a year doing it. And so I had no other choice. I came back to California, and that was the first thing I did. I took $50. I went to the local thrift store. I started picking up these books, and I remember I made my first sale while I was like sleeping. It was like 4 in the morning. I sold a book called Save the Cat on screenwriting or something like that. And basically that got me hooked. So I started driving up and down California and picking up all these used books. And I have these bookshelves in the room, and I was stacking these books, cleaning them, scanning them in, sending them to the Amazon fulfillment centers. When a customer placed an order, Amazon would ship it to my customer, so I didn't have to do any work. And the only problem was I was driving all around Creation in LA traffic and San Diego traffic, and it ended up being like more work than my full-time job. And because I was so heavily in debt, just the resources weren't there. I couldn't hire anybody because I was still like all the money basically went to paying down interest or reinvesting in inventory. And so I started thinking about other ways to optimize the process. So I started wholesaling, and from wholesaling, I learned about um, private labeling from China. And at the time, this was a big thing. You would buy products from China, you'd slap your label and do some minor marketing on it. You list it on Amazon, and since Amazon owns so much of the traffic, you basically sold on autopilot and you didn't have to do anything. And it worked. By God, it worked. I was selling, I think on Black Friday, I sold something like 69 units and made $2,000 in a day. And I didn't lift a finger. There was initial work, sure. Like I had to send a few emails. I had to take a picture and come up with a logo myself, write product descriptions and things like that. But it worked. But then Amazon put like a review slap on, kind of what you hear stories of the Google Penguin slap, where people would try to work the system. Basically, in order to win on Amazon, you have to be on page 1 because nobody goes to page 20. And back then, to get to page one, you give away a bunch of free products in exchange for a review. Amazon would recognize that as a sale. Then you build that social proof, and so your product starts to sell automatically. But when Amazon started removing all those reviews and banned incentivized reviews, it put me back at square one. And mind you, this is like still me being in super heavy debt, and I had just placed another order for like another shipment of inventory coming into the US, and so I was like, oh crap, what do I do? I have all this inventory, and it's still at the Amazon warehouse, mind you, but I have all this inventory. I don't know what to do with it. I can't push product, and I didn't know anything about marketing. I came across a webinar and on building an email list by Mike Dillard. And basically, that was the start to my entire marketing venture. I purchased the course, and I was really disappointed because here I thought it would apply to e-commerce, and it was all about selling information at $49 or whatever it is. But it gave me the foundations of how to run a business. It gave me the foundations of what a tripwire product was, what a lead magnet was, how to have a continuity offer and upsells and downsells. And so that I took and I said, okay, this could apply to e-commerce. So I started thinking, okay, wow, there's so much I don't know. So I started consuming tons more content. And with every piece of content I consumed, there was a piece of garbage content. I was, and that's really the journey of how I got into digital marketing and why I'm trying to create a personal brand, because I can't tell you the countless hours I've spent listening to absolute garbage content from these so-called internet marketers that talk about funnels and whatever else. And it wasted so much of my time, especially me being such heavy in debt. So I started listening to everything on 2x speed to consume the information and filter out whether it's garbage or not. And the way I basically saw it was, does it apply to e-commerce? Does it apply to software as a service? Does it apply to information? If it applies to everything and all the above, then it's good marketing. If it doesn't, if you're teaching me some one-step, $1 a day Facebook hack that teaches you how to sell information to other people to teach them how to sell information, I'm not interested. So I started learning from David Ogilvy. I started learning from like the old school guys like Claude Hopkins and all these people. And I started studying the Harmon brothers religiously to find out why their videos worked and what the pacing was of that. Obviously, Digital Marketer and a bunch of these guys. And I basically compiled like a huge list of stuff in my head. I have a whole hard drive of just advertising references and swipes and things like that. And, it really turned me into a good marketer. But by that time, I ran out of money, because this was like 6 months to a year in the making. I have all this product that I just paid for, and I basically have to learn how to build a business from scratch the right way without any shortcuts. So this took like 6 months, a year out of my time. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm poor now. I'm going to try to launch an information product. And then long story short, I ran out of money for Facebook advertising. So, I ended up applying for jobs because, by now I'm like 50,000 in credit card debt after buying inventory and all that. And, my boss right now, he just comes up and he's like, man, your resume stood out. I don't know what it is, but you're an entrepreneur. I know it's a double-edged sword because entrepreneurs can never be employees. And it's completely true. I'm exhausted every day. And, like all I think about is my work and what I'm trying to accomplish and what I want to change in this internet marketing industry. But, I really want to bring the foundations back to people. So it's not this one-step hack or my simple 3-step funnel process or any of that stuff. I really want to bring real advertising back to people so business owners don't get gypped. I'm a victim of it myself. I paid for courses. I wasted countless hours on webinars that don't work. So that's my long story. Rags to riches.
That's such a crazy story. And so your day job, you do marketing, and then your side hustle is marketing as well, right?
Yeah. So my side hustle is to try to establish a better means of business education for people. It's really sad because we live in this kind of new age of business education where everything's a webinar, everything's a selfie stick, teaching this Facebook Live stuff, and then they teach you that, oh, you just host a webinar and things will sell. Well, I'm sorry, I will never be able to sell my set of Bose headphones with a webinar. And so my whole goal is to redefine how people learn internet marketing and actually teach them the right processes. It's kind of like how I feel this whole space is evolving is back then people were just trying to learn how to use the tools instead of the principles. But you can't build an aircraft component without understanding physics. You might know all the bolts, you might know the threads, you might know the machinery, but if you don't know the physics, your plane's never going to fly. And it's the same thing with marketing. You could learn this one-step funnel that worked for whatever marketer, but if you don't understand the purpose of a funnel, if you don't understand the purpose of direct response, if you don't understand, all the stuff, it's not going to work. It worked for that marketer, for that product, but you might have a completely different product. You might be in e-commerce, you might be in software as a service, you might be doing videography or whatever you're doing. But if you don't understand the principles, it's like not understanding physics and hoping that you're going to be able to make a car that works.
The analogy is pretty impactful in the sense that it's going back to the basics and going back to understanding the tools. And you mentioned going back to bringing this big push in the digital, like the internet marketing industry, and pulling it back to real marketing. How do you define real marketing? What is that for people who need to come back to the basics?
Well, I believe you have to practice what you preach. So I run ad spend, obviously at my day job. I've run a business in the past. I know what I am doing, but more importantly, if you're going to teach something and you're going to market what you're teaching, then the way you market it better be the same way Apple will market it, or the same way it should be cross-platform. So my point being is, yes, webinars work to sell information, but webinars will not work to sell something like a drill. Nobody's, I guess you could hypothetically say it could, but nobody's going to give you an hour of their time to listen to you talking about a drill. So, bring back certain things like video quality. You would never see a selfie stick on TV. I'm sorry. You would never see it. Heck, half of these amateur YouTubers have better video quality. Bring back developing an actual marketing story that compels people, opposed to going like, "Hey, my name's Anthony," and da 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 da. Would you really say, "Hey guys, my name's Anthony, and I'm selling this Apple iPod right here. It does this, this, this." That's how a lot of these internet marketers teach internet marketing. They say that I ran this quick advertising dressed in a Batman suit and I got leads, and so this must be how you run advertising. But the way I see it, if it doesn't apply, if those same concepts don't apply across all the different industries, I'm sorry, it's bad advertising, and you're actually manipulating people because you're trying to tell them that they could quit their day job by doing this one-step simple Facebook funnel. And not only is it deceptive, I just think you're not practicing the real stuff. You're not practicing what you preach. And so my goal is to bring good video quality back, good storytelling back, a good example of something that most people probably don't have the budget to do, but there's this new company that's out called Masterclass.
Oh yeah. I get their ads all the time.
You get their ads all the time, and although most of their ads don't follow the standard direct response, like problem, agitate, solution, call to action kind of deal, even though none of their advertising has that, you somehow want to take a course by Gordon Ramsay, right?
And granted, they also have the celebrity
Yes.
tie-in. They've got these A-listers who are like, oh, I do want to learn from the best. It's truly a masterclass. It breaks down both visually and with images from whether they're films or their scores.
Yeah.
Most of them are within the film and TV industry, and you're pulled in by the fact that, oh, they did that recognizable that piece, and I want to learn how to do that.
That's a perfect example. And like I said, for whoever's going to view this in the future, I completely understand that most people don't have this kind of budget or the skill set. A few things. One, a lot of the skill set could be learned on YouTube. Lighting could be learned on YouTube. There are plenty of case studies where they took like 10-year-old cameras and just tweaked the lighting and it looks HD. Um, the other thing is we're we're working with Chamber Media right now, and Chamber Media did a great, fantastic ad for our pillows. And it literally used three locations, I believe: a bedroom, a kitchen, and a laundry room. And Travis Chambers was one of the actors, so obviously that comes as a free expense. My point being is that you still could provide a very good direct response video that's entertaining and not boring on a fairly low budget. And this could apply to information products as well. You don't have to be limited to a webinar. You don't have to be limited to, a really bad quality selfie stick. You could create a story that moves people, that paces people, that makes people laugh, draws in their emotion, and incorporates your branding without, very expensive equipment. It's very well possible. I mean, for God's sakes, your iPhone shoots in 4K.
I know. Well, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. And it's interesting too, because as the potential of doing this and being successful at this model on the internet continues to grow, I feel like there's going to be a bubble that bursts with all these self-made coaches, internet marketers, brand owners who, granted, they've been smart with how they've approached and hacked the system to make it work, but it's been that unique balance between, I mentioned earlier, between the creative and the strategy, or like the science behind things, is where many of them lack the creative knowledge, but they know the strategy that's working, the formula. And so they provide one half of the equation of
Exactly,
pulling
yeah.
people in with, they may have a nice mic, but you don't, or you see them on a webcam on their cell phone and they're mixed in with a slideshow presentation.
Yeah,
And that gets you so far, but you're being sold less with stories. Although your story is incredibly real and authentic and like it is emotional, like to have your story told in a professional video would be incredible. But oftentimes the go-to story, which although may be true, it's kind of beating a dead horse of I was on my parents' couch.
yeah, that's not the story.
It's like they're selling their rags to riches, or it's like, oh, now I'm going to go buy this Bentley, although 5 years ago I was on this couch, so you can do this too.
Yeah, that's not what we're trying to sell when we sell product. When we sell product, that's not the story. Your customer doesn't care about that story. The only reason people teach that story is because they, for whatever reason, think that the customer could view themselves in that position. The real story goes back to The Hero's Journey, I think, by Jack Campbell, where the customer is the hero. That hero has a problem. That problem, is triggered by something. And then along this journey, that hero meets a guide that gives them a plan. And that plan is to help them overcome the quest to get the end result, which is to be the hero. So it's Jack Campbell's Hero's Journey. To bring it back into marketing, your customer is the hero. That's the story you need to tell, not necessarily the rags to riches. If the rags to riches story falls into that, great. But the actual story you need to tell is, hey, you're the hero of this movie. My product can help you solve this problem that you're overcoming. My brand, whether it be personal or, a big corporation, my brand is the guide, and we're going to give you this plan, aka the new Apple iPhone or whatever it is. And that plan is going to help you overcome your obstacles, objections, and all these quests so you could fulfill and step into your role of the hero. That's the story that we need to communicate to our prospects. It just so happens that in this internet marketing space, people think that that story is about them.
Well, it's a misunderstanding of what story is too. I mean, you hit on it with the hero's journey. The way I break it up is you have, the main character is being the heart of the story, has a desire and wants to accomplish something.
Yep.
Be that solve their problem usually. And so they're sent on this journey, the hero's journey, right? And then along the way, there's conflict.
Yep.
And then the relatable part and the most impactful part is how they overcome that conflict. Or maybe they don't, but it provides a resolution. And that's kind of it's the whole idea of accomplishing a desire with struggle and conflict.
Yep.
So Andrew Stanton, he's a writer for Pixar and he's directed too. He did a TED Talk where he breaks down the elements of a good story, because we all know Pixar are incredible storytellers. And he talks about the make me care element. Do I care about the characters? You could write an incredible script or you could create an incredible product, but how do you make someone care about the product? What makes it impactful? How can they have an emotional response from experiencing whether it's your content or the product itself, and what value can it provide? So it's interesting too, because the marketer, the internet marketers or other brand owners, it goes far beyond just the internet marketing industry, is
Do you make somebody care
these
about your product?
buzzwords. Yeah, like how do you make someone care, and how do you define these taboo words, from the word story or the word authentic?
In my opinion, this goes back to dating. The reason you date a guy or girl is because you think that they are cool beings. You like them as a person. You might initially be attracted to how they look or whatever, but at the end of the day, what's going to make you stay together is the fact that, they're this fun, lovable person, you're this fun, lovable person, and you guys match. And when it comes to your brand or your product, you need to hit on that emotion. Everybody has a specific archetype. There are people that are the humorous people. There are people that are the big macho man, right? And your product needs to tailor to who they want to become. If this awesome stainless steel hunting knife that's, black powder coated is going to make them feel like this macho man, then that means that your product advertising needs to convey that, hey, I'm this badass stainless steel hunting knife, and by buying me, you could solve your problem of insecurity and wanting to be a macho man. And my point is that at the end of the day, that is direct response. That is selling a product. And back to what you were saying about content is just a means of delivery of that. You're not always going to get that 2-minute video to communicate everything you need, because people's attention spans are shorter, and you're going to need more touch points as customers and people become immune to your marketing. So content is going to be increasingly more important, because what's going to happen? They're going to see your ad initially, and then they're going to swipe away and blow it off, and then they'll see a retargeting ad. Maybe that retargeting ad is a branding video that shows your awesome hunting knife and how you could be this awesome grizzly man, and then they'll still click away because they're not ready to buy and pay $60 for a knife yet. And then all of a sudden they run into a blog article of how you could build your own shelter with this hunting knife. And now they're starting to picture themselves building this shelter, being this, wilderness man versus nature kind of deal. And now they're starting to become perceptive and ready to take on your advertising. So the next time you do launch a direct response ad and create that story that if the customer buys that hunting knife, they could be this awesome, crazy, manly human being. That's how you sell a product. You could do this if you're really, really good. You do this in 4 minutes like the Harmon brothers. But, like I said, as people become immune to that kind of marketing, it's going to be more important to do commerce, because let's say the Harmon brothers, everybody starts hiring the Harmon brothers to do humorous videos. I've analyzed the Harmon brothers so many times that their advertising doesn't work on me, because I'm like, okay, yet another same formula, but that's going to eventually happen. And that's kind of how the progression of marketing started. It started with direct response. Everybody selling, as seen on TV, chop and block infomercials. And that was like when TV media came in, that was kind of the first exposure. And then once direct response started becoming less effective, that's when branding started becoming more important. That's why people inside the perfume commercials, they don't talk about, oh, how lovely it's going to make you smell. They start talking about, you could be this macho player man, or you could be this sexy woman, or whatever it is. They never talk about the perfume. They talk about who you could become. That's the story. The story of the customer and who the customer could become by buying your perfume. Long story short, after that happened and everybody started copying that, and Apple and Samsung both become the next big thing, we go back to what Seth Godin talks about with the purple cow. It's no longer enough to just brand or be direct response. You have to be different. And being different means you solve problems. And this is all business is solving problems that the other guy isn't. It's not necessarily being better. It's solving the problems that are lacking in your industry.
Wow, that's powerful, what you just said. And, and it's interesting too, because I had this conversation recently actually with my brother, who is a sales guy. He loves sales, and he's really fascinated by the webinar experience, and he wants to become a master at the webinar experience. And what I was telling him is, with producing the webinar experience that we've seen many times, with the clients, with the brands I support with content, I don't want the content to be like all the other webinars, because it's the cut and dry, it's the voice, it's the slideshow. What they're lacking is the creative and the story. Who says you can't sell and hack the webinar experience and that sales funnel? I mean, there's always a sales funnel that exists in different forms, right? But you modify the webinar experience and you tap into storytelling for one. You focus less on like, I'm going to lead you down this path and do all the upsell, like you can incorporate that, but you can shorten it down to easily less than 15 minutes. I mean, the webinars we see are 45 minutes plus. I mean, you can cut it down even shorter than 15 minutes. You can tell a story and you can just focus on like, and just being upfront and honest. Like, I don't need to give you all this fluff beforehand. I'll provide you a little value, but I'll do so by telling a story. I think people get stuck in like, oh, this worked. This webinar formula works, and so I'm going to keep on doing it. It's going to burst at one point, and there's not longevity to these models. Like, it needs to be hacked.
So the way I see it, it's kind of like Disneyland. Disneyland started with one theme park in Anaheim, California. Then they did Florida, and now they have China, and they have Paris. And all of a sudden, even though Disneyland is still a powerhouse, all of a sudden, as they release more theme parks, it becomes less exclusive, and people become less immune to wanting to go to Disney because it's right down the street. Six Flags, Magic theme park encountered the same thing, and it's the same thing with the webinar experience. Or, like, I don't want to just limit it to webinars, but any kind of product you sell. Like I said, back then it was infomercials, and then all these infomercials started coming out, and people became immune to infomercials. And so people had to get more creative and do branding and so forth. And it's the same thing with the webinar experience.
With marketing, what areas do you specialize in? Like, what do you specifically focus on?
I would say I specialize in direct response and basically coming up with the funnels and the ad and the whole creative. If you're asking me to do like blog content, not you particularly, but if anybody were to ask me to just come up with fun blog content, that'd be garbage at that. I find that the most boring thing in the world. But like understanding the persuasion elements, understanding how to pace videos to make it entertaining, things like that, understanding how to sell, that's what I would focus on probably. Don Reed said it best. I mean, and I believe this too, the same marketing that was used to sell fish over thousands of years ago is the exact same marketing used today. The medium's different. We use Facebook, we use video now, but back then, you still had to get attention when you were sitting in your little booth. You had to pique their interest, you had to get them to desire your product, and you had to get them to take action. It's the same concepts.
Totally. And that applies beyond just marketing, but other principles, right? I mean, it's the cycles of society. I mean, there's, it's the whole idea behind history repeats itself, and it does in different forms. I mean, technology has opened up more avenues for the same principles to be utilized. So,
exactly.
And so the sales process behind video content exclusively, or other forms of content too?
Other forms of content too. I mean, at the end of the day, a script is a script. I mean, with video content, you have to worry a little more about how to make it visually appealing.
Mm-hmm.
Using the rules of thirds to the scene and everything. But as far as the words are the words. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, it could be anything from Facebook ads to the script of a video to an email marketing campaign that uses words, things like that. And taking them through that whole customer journey through time so they're interested in buying your product. So it's the stacking of marketing and stacking of trust, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Is it your goal to eventually pursue your side hustle exclusively?
I am pursuing my side hustle. That's essentially my goal. I'm going to get into basically, I mean, I hate to say it, but internet marketing and teaching the education behind this stuff. But the goal is to, I was heavily influenced by Masterclass and a little bit by Digital Marketer and things like that. And the goal is to basically fix a lot of what internet marketing is now. That's like a super passionate thing for me because, I was in e-commerce and I did sell physical products and I got burned a few times and I spent thousands of dollars on courses. So I just want to fix the issue so that nobody else gets burned again, and I want to make it entertaining. And then I want to take it to another level. Like, I want to turn it into a store, an actual store, where there's an add to cart button, there's a wish list, there's order history, things like that, where instead of just click funnels and lead pages and whatever else, it's run like an actual business, like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Or Masterclass. If you go on Masterclass's website, there's an add to cart button, there's a my account button, all this stuff. So I'm actually paying a developer right now and coordinating. That's predominantly where I spend most of my side hustle time, is I coordinate with this web developer exactly how I need this website laid out, and I already have like a business plan of how I'm going to launch this content.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
So
I'm interested to learn more about this. This is cool.
Yeah, my first course that I'm going to be offering, we just came up with a name today, but it's called Precision Proposition. So what I told you earlier in the podcast is that you need a unique selling proposition these days. Because back then, direct response and selling the next chopping block worked, but then it got old. And then branding worked, and then branding got old because Coca-Cola and Pepsi had the same branding. Apple and Samsung had the same branding. So people become immune to it. And now the only thing that works and the only thing that will forever work is to be different, to be the purple cow. And I don't know if you've heard Seth Godin's book or seen his talk or anything, but he talks about how if you're the purple cow in a sea of normal cows, you're the one that stands out. If you're just a normal cow and you're driving by the side of the road, nobody's going to stop to pay attention to you. But if you're purple, people will pull over, they will take a selfie with you, the owner of that cow could charge $5 a head, and you'll still pay to take the selfie. And it's the same concept of why everybody goes to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower, because it's the only one around. That's why, the purple mattress sells so well, because it's the only one with that technology. So, but to be the purple cow, you don't really have to be revolutionary. I found out that there are actually 9 things that you could do in order to create a unique selling proposition to keep your business different. For example, the Dollar Shave Club, they solved a problem, and this goes back to our talk earlier where I said all businesses are solving problems that nobody else is doing. So the Dollar Shave Club didn't reinvent the razor. They bought 70-cent razors from Alibaba. What did they reinvent? They reinvented the price, and they reinvented the convenience. For the first time ever, you get razors sent straight to your door for starting at $1. You don't have to pay the high margins. Generic razors at $1 to your door. So that was an example of how you could develop a unique selling proposition without having to create like expensive new technology. And there's countless examples of this. Prime, Amazon Prime with 2-day shipping. First company ever to offer free 2-day shipping for Prime members. The list goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
So basically, I sat back, and this is not something you'll find in a textbook, but I sat back and figured out what made people the purple cow, because everybody tells you you need to be unique and stand out, but nobody tells you how. Long story short, I'm going to be launching this brand, and that's going to be my first course, is teaching you how to create that unique selling proposition so you can stand out from the competition.
And you're going to structure it like the Masterclass platform?
The website's going to be structured very much like the Masterclass platform, where there's an add to cart, there's a buy now, there's coupon codes. Obviously, I'm going to implement some things like free trainings and stuff, but instead of entering your email address, I'm actually hard programming it, so you could just press continue with Facebook, like you've seen on websites and stuff like that, to log in, and it'll retrieve your email address and give you instant access. So it'll remove a barrier for people, things like that. I guess the main structure that I'm planning to structure it with is I want to create a very documentary, entertainment value type feel to it, where, yes, it's going to sell, but more importantly, it's going to entertain while selling. So it's not just another boring thing you're watching. It's not just a million other internet marketing videos you've seen. And so the whole goal is that every year there's a different season teaching a different thing, and it's very much like a recurring TV show.
Ah, gotcha. Crazy. And how are you going to look about sourcing content in that process? Because you're not necessarily the content creator, but you're the strategy owner and developer behind all this?
Kind of both. I mean, I can create content, but like I said, if it's just pure entertainment value, I'm really bad at that stuff. But I've scripted out a full, like, I think it's still in first draft, but I scripted out a full 3-part documentary series on it. I've also got my girlfriend who's a little more on the creative side. She likes to do creative writing, and so she helps out with that. But it's still in the learning processes too. So because we're all starting out with our side hustles and all that, I'm learning like cinematography as I go. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, and the cool thing is, I mean, the cool thing about the creative side is, as with many things that you want to learn it's an acquired skill. You put in the time, you can learn it. And as you mentioned earlier too, the skills to learn different things are available online easily, free or paid. And so, and the tools are more accessible now more than ever, on the creative side or on the strategy side. And so it's this offering, this platform you're building sounds super fascinating. I'm really interested to.
I'm really passionate about this stuff because I know, first of all, I've run an actual business, and then the other thing is I've been burned so many times from these internet marketers, and, I just know how tough it could be getting torn every which way and, learning this thing and then it doesn't work, and then learning that thing and it doesn't work, and then in the interim you waste all this money. And I could only imagine if I had kids, that's really why I want to get into this industry and change it, because I could very well easily buy more product from China, import it in, create a 2-minute viral video with the help of a videographer, and then sell. But, although there might be some fulfillment in that, it's just, I'm much more passionate in making sure people get started on the right foot. It goes back to the talk that we had earlier, where you can't build an aircraft without learning the physics. You can't build a funnel without understanding what the purpose of a funnel is. And the purpose of the funnel is to either raise awareness or increase trust. At the end of the day, advertising is advertising. It goes back to just be cool. Girls don't want to date douchey boys. Boys don't want to date girls that are, little pricks. So it's the same thing with the advertising in your brand. It goes back to authenticity. It goes back to, are you interrupting them when they don't want to be interrupted? Or, things like that. Or are you helping them escape their day job of doom? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If there's one thing I want your audience to hear is the advertising doesn't change, and it's really, as business owners, we get really, really overwhelmed with the ins and outs. Do we use lead pages or ClickFunnels? Do we use email marketing, or do we use Facebook or Google Shopping or whatever? It's really, really easy to get consumed in that and forget what the actual purpose of running a business is, and that is to solve a problem that makes your customers happy. When you become passionate with that, you don't need to worry about any of this stuff. Reddit started with like a $500 advertising budget doing stickers, So the message is more important. The message and the product is more important than all the nitty-gritty techniques, because the psychology hasn't changed. Human beings don't evolve that fast,
Yeah, totally get it. Well, Anthony, it's been real. Seriously, I've really appreciated the time.
You too, man.
So we mentioned content and brand building throughout this episode. So if you're overwhelmed with running your business and you need more content, especially an ongoing constant supply of content that's custom, all in order to take your brand to the next level, then make sure to learn more and check out our website of Content Supply at contentsupply.io. So thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.